Is our council administration and policy committee meeting. I would call it to order and ask if you had an opportunity to look at the minutes and if you have a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
The minutes are approved. Ms. Williams, always a pleasure to have you here.
Absolutely. I agree.
And here, not in court.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't want to see you at your
I don't want
office.
to see at your office, but out here it's fine.
Brother, see you here.
Shame on you guys. All right, this is going, well, let me give you a little background. We started doing the Toys for Tots 2019. And we actually go along with the Marine Corps. And so we started jumping in with them. Outside of all our departments actually collecting toys. And so we started jumping in with them. We missed 20 because of COVID. And then last year, I think we just waited too late. But each year, they're cutting it shorter and shorter. So this year, I'm doing it a little early. So this will authorize us to collect a $10 toy for every overtime $18 parking ticket. And then if they are wanting to donate 2, then it'll take care of 2 tickets. So we are wanting to begin November the 7th and run it all the way through December the 5th. I think the Marine Corps, I think their pickup date is gonna be on the 5th. And Candace Elmore in OCA, she heads it up.
Go ahead.
Now, I just want to add something to it for anybody who's watching today. I think it's this week is the deadline for our families to sign up to be recipients of Toys for Tots this year. So they always do it in October, but not, of course, not too late to give toys. But anybody watching knows families that need to sign up to benefit from Toys for Tots needs to do so.
Yeah, I wanted to give the media time to get some advertisement out there, so that's why I didn't want to start until November 7th. That would give Dr. Rush and his office time to get it out there.
My son told me one of his highlights in the Marine Corps was getting to hand out gifts.
Yeah,
And so I'm all about this.
yeah.
Do we have any
Make
more
a
questions?
Second.
Okay, second, all in favor? Aye. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Williams.
All right, the Downtown Riverfront Overlay District permit for Hine Atkins Salon.
Good afternoon.
Mr. John.
How are you guys?
Doing good, how are you?
Good. So before you, we have DRD 622 for Hine Atkins Salon petitioning for an addition to the structure at 2605 11th Street, Zone BGO DROD in Council District 1. This is right on the west side of the South Lurleen Boulevard.
And from discussing this already, this does not infringe on anybody else's property or make any hardships on the neighbors.
I don't believe so. We've got a site survey pulled up that'll, you'll be able to see the addition. This is the subject property currently. They are petitioning to construct a 2-story addition. This will be an expansion of their current premises and provide a break room for their employees. They will also expand some of their parking. 8 new parking spaces will be added. They'll have 14 in total. This does meet the standards. The materials for the addition will be hardy board, and they are also enclosing the front porch area with hardy board as well. This was reviewed by the Architectural Review Committee and Planning Commission. Here's that site plan we were discussing earlier. You can see the parking, the building, and the addition at the back. This is the front where they'll be enclosing it. There was some discussion at Planning Commission about not using stucco as you see in this drawing here, but instead using hardy to enclose it. So that has been updated. This is the rear of the building. You can see in the bottom corner there the addition, second floor, and the staircase up to that addition as well. This will be the rear of the building, a new entrance back there, and that adjusted roof pitch for the addition. They'll also enclose this opening on the side that faces Lurleen. They'll have a larger window in that area. And this was unanimously recommended approval at the September Planning Commission with the condition that the siding that fronts Lurleen and for the addition as well as for the front porch all be hardy.
What is hardy?
It's a type of siding. It's a cementitious material.
What material?
Cementitious siding.
Cementitious?
Cementitious. It's yes.
What, are they, handicap accessible in that? Or they had any requirements for that, or is all their other will be downstairs?
Yes, yes. She actually has, it's a break area, and she has a break area downstairs, but this is really operating, she's kind of a serial entrepreneur, and so she's expanding her business and gonna have some multiple types of employees, and so she wanted 2 break areas, so it's just duplicated. So
Okay.
This should, just basic, almost like a new business for District 1.
I think they're already operating
I know
there.
they're already operating, but it'll be as if it were more business for District 1.
Do you guys have any other questions?
Well, I'll make a motion.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thank y'all.
Thank you. This is a fun discussion. Who's gonna lead this? Ms. Price?
I do the short straw. Play paper, scissors, rock a second ago. And
The Sidewalk Cafe ordinance
yes,
update.
update. So a month ago, we talked about sidewalk cafes, which will mostly be in the downtown area and on the strip. And we were asked to go and find some best practices, updates to our ordinance, and engage with the stakeholders. And we have done that, and we're back. So let's talk really quickly about where we are, remembering this multi-department staff team that was put together. You had just about every department represented in this situation. And we looked at the best practices from other communities. You see a lot of SEC communities represented and also other Alabama cities. And for funsies, we also looked at Los Angeles County in California, because why not? So Asheville, North Carolina, of course, you see these beautiful streetscapes, and we've gotten to experience them through our benchmarking trips with the Chamber, and also Greenville, South Carolina. And we said, how can we replicate some of this? So through the Revenue Department, our division today, what we have are, we're proposing that the Sidewalk Cafe permit, instead of going through TDOT, which is not it's a thing, but it's not a thing. Instead of going through TDOT like it is today, we'd like it to go through Accounting and Finance Revenue Department as part of their business license process. And so in keeping with that theme, y'all have in your packets, I forget what page you're on, maybe 13 it looks like, the proposed amendments to the code regarding sidewalk cafes. And just walking you through it really quickly, what you will see and what we're very proud of is the fact that most everybody today is not going to be too impacted. Those that have sidewalk cafes today may have a couple tweaks that they've got to make to get into line with the ordinance. But for the most part, we're going to be able to get there without too much strife and consternation. One of the folks down on Temerson Square actually was very excited about this, because he thought it was an opportunity to help increase the streetscape, to allow for personality to come through in what they show on the outside. Because right now, it's very monotonous, very black, black furnishings, black bollards. Why not add some fun and color? So for the border situation, we're proposing to keep as it is, allowing only in front of your business and then wrapping around the side if you've got a corner lot. One of the bigger changes is right now we only require a 5-foot unobstructed pathway. We'd like to increase that to 6 for ADA purposes. We'd like to allow no border in certain cases, maybe if there are no alcohol sales, for example. Allow for a variety in borders. We have created design guidelines, which is very consistent with other communities. That way when someone comes to apply for a sidewalk cafe, we can hand them here's what to do and what not to do. Here's a step-by-step process. Mr. Pons, Ms. Blank, Mr. Pons in planning, Ms. Blank in operations have been critical in getting that pulled together. We want to allow those bollards or barriers to be bolted or unbolted. If they're unbolted from the sidewalk, it just needs to be heavy enough that, you're not just shoving them, or I'm not picking them up and moving them for you. So anyway, you see some existing examples here. And that picture on the right is what I'm talking about when it comes to adding some variety and some spice. There is nothing wrong with what you're looking at right there. It's kind of cool. It lets the personality of the business shine through.
Now, those benches would have to go?
No, the benches are fine.
So
Well, wait, where are the benches?
The ones on the right there.
Oh, yeah, those would have to move.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have to sit.
I see them now. Yeah,
Yeah.
those would have to move. But for the most part, that's an easy fix and won't impact much of anything. For our furnishings, we want to allow flexibility in the materials and colors. As I mentioned today, the regulations say that your furnishings must be black metal and heavy enough that they don't get whipped around. So, but you can see in the picture on the right-hand side of your screen, there's nothing wrong with what you're looking at. That's beautiful. And we want to continue to allow things like that to happen. Make sure the regulations are in place so you're not getting cheap plastic furniture, but making sure that that personality of the business can shine through. We want to allow them to keep furnishings, etc., within their approved borders after closing if they so choose. And then making sure that things like planters are within the borders. That was one of the biggest things in our audit of the downtown and the strip area. You have things like planters that are being located outside of the borders. Those need to get pulled in because it's impacting the pedestrian throughway. And you see some more existing examples here of different types of furnishings. And then umbrellas. So this is going to be a quick sticking point, and it's going to be up for a little bit of discussion for the council. Today, the regulation says that umbrellas are to be solid in color, period. We know that umbrellas are one of the things that a couple companies are willing to purchase for a business who is carrying their product. And so that's why you have seen other umbrellas pop up with a logo or two on them. Those are not supposed to be where they are. That's part of this process. We're going to try to shape things together. We'd like to continue to restrict umbrellas to be a solid color and make a small change to say, or a uniform pattern without advertising. So that, if that is something you as a council are willing to continue on, that is fine. If you'd like to let them have the Pepsi or the Coke logos, that is also fine. Just let me know.
Personally, I like what we see there a lot. I like, and that is really neat.
Yeah, I really like the happy
And
sunshine.
tell me again how much an umbrella costs, probably.
I feel like they're not very expensive, like $8,500. For an umbrella.
I'm sorry.
$8,500.
But it's not like we're asking.
85 to 100, not 8,500.
Oh yeah, 85 to 100. I'm so
That's
sorry.
what, yeah, I heard 8,500 too.
Oh yeah, no, that would be
I was
terrible.
about to go check salaries in the urban planning
That
department.
goes along with Eric's $175 million.
Yeah, Eric and I went to the same school of math, I think. So $85 to $100 for an umbrella.
And it will look much better, I think, than a logo out there.
I would prefer they not become advertising vehicles.
Yeah, that's right.
We're assaulted enough as it is.
Well, that's easy enough. We can just keep the regulations as it is, and
Right.
then the code enforcement, code and development services division of urban development can help make sure they stay that way. We'd like to add in that a minimum clearance of 7 feet must be maintained. We've got tall folks who, don't need to be ducking as they walk down our right-of-way, keeping that pedestrian pathway clear, and making sure they don't encroach outside of the border into that pedestrian pathway. And we've taken a look at these examples already. So the permitting process and fees. Today,
Can we,
Yes,
can
sir.
we back up a little bit? So, go back like 2 or 3 more pictures. One more. One more. One more. Okay, so does the the 5 feet going to 6 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, I assume, a kind of an ADA, that's so that handicapped people, wheelchairs can get by, right?
Yes.
So where we have these trees planted, are we counting that 5 feet as from here to here?
So on page 14, what we're writing in is there shall be a 3-foot minimum distance from the edge of the tree grate to the border, and then a minimum 5-foot distance between a tree grate and a border parallel to a tree grate. So basically, we need to have 3 feet of distance from here to here. Minimum.
Okay.
Yeah, and so this planter probably needs to tuck a little bit more to maintain a 3-foot separation there.
Okay, and then, so I had that question about how are we dealing with that. What are we doing about people putting tents over our side? I mean, we.
Tents are prohibited.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Because we've got some people who spend money to put nice canopies out, and we approved a blade sign today, and then we got other places where we've got a Walmart tent
Yeah, we
out
concur.
on our.
We concur. And this will prohibit tents from being utilized outside.
And last question, who again is enforcing what already is in existence?
So right now, applications go through TDOT per code.
No, but who's enforcing, not applications, but, so there's a couple of places that have built walls on
So
our sidewalk.
some of those walls will have gone through the right-of-way use permit process. But then who is enforcing that today, that because it's right-of-way, is probably going through what is now Public Works.
So in right-of-way use, we haven't allowed anybody, have we, to concrete or bolt into the sidewalk and then build boards? Have we allowed that? Is that,
We might have.
okay,
But if and when this new ordinance is passed, your group will enforce this.
Yes, Codes and Development Services will be enforcing,
And that'll be Will.
yes, Mr. Smith and his team. So, and the applications for sidewalk cafes will go through and start with revenue. There'll be a multidisciplinary staff review. Most of the folks that you saw listed will get a chance to take a look at it. And Codes and Development Services will be making sure that we're not seeing encroachments, or the academy tent that shows up every now and then is no longer showing up every now and then. If someone doesn't have a sidewalk cafe permit, let's get them corrected and things of that nature. But let's talk about that permitting process really quickly. So today, of course, I've mentioned those applications are being handled by TDOT, and you see today there's a $100 application fee and either a $100 or a $250 annual fee, depending on if you have alcohol or not. So your alcohol ones pay $250 a year, non-alcohol pay $100 a year. And so what we're proposing, again, is to have those start with revenue, renewing annually with the business license through that process that I just outlined. And then the big question is, do we maintain the fees as they exist or not? And I know Mr. Smelly sent out a couple weeks ago a few slides showing these best practices from other communities and what these other communities are doing when it comes to sidewalk cafes and the use of the public right-of-way. And you'll see Asheville, Athens, Georgia is $100 per year plus $1 per square foot. Auburn, Fayetteville, Arkansas, Los Angeles again for fun. And then Oxford, Mississippi at $22 per square foot. So we provided y'all with some examples of what
$22 per square foot.
22 per square foot. They have a very complicated process as well. Their planning director and I talked about it last year at the state conference.
I really appreciate these next slides, actually. This makes it much easier for me to understand what we're doing.
Yeah, so for example, you see 5, they've got about 750 square feet outside space. For us today, they pay $350 that first year and then $250 per year afterwards. In Asheville, they would have a $750 initial fee with $150 per year after. Athens is $850 a year. Auburn, $500, and Oxford, Mississippi, $16,500.
So somebody in Tuscaloosa is paying $350, but in Auburn, they're paying $500. For Asheville, which is about our size, I think.
Something along those lines, yeah. Then you've got Black Warrior Brewing Company, which has an outdoor space of about 600 square feet. They serve alcohol, so again, $350. Asheville, about $750. Athens, Auburn, and Oxford. And then you have a small example like Monarch, which has about 130 square feet outside. Because they don't serve alcohol, it's $100 per year after that initial payment of $200, and then you'll see how it breaks out every other year, all the way down to what Oxford is doing. So if y'all want to maintain our fees as they currently are, we're happy to have that discussion. We just wanted to bring you some proposed suggestions for code updates and see what you had to think about it. The public and the stakeholders, they just want to make sure everyone's being treated fairly.
Now, this is y'all's district mostly, but my thoughts are, I think they ought to be paying a per square foot charge, not $22, but $1 or $2, and it might depend if $1 if you don't have alcohol, $2 if you do, because they're gonna get this, they're getting our property for free right now, and I think, not completely free, but more or less. And they'll argue with me on that. But I think they need to pay for using the city sidewalks that we have to maintain. And I'd love to hear what y'all think about that.
Walk me back to what was the larger one, Black Warrior? Walk me back to that slide.
5 would have been the largest one.
So they currently pay $350. What are the other cities, is that what they would pay there?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So the other examples are, okay, if it were in Asheville, they would pay a $600 application fee and then $150 per year, so $750 that first year, and then $150 in the years to follow. In Athens, Georgia, you'd be looking at $850 total every year, and then Auburn, $500 every year. Oxford, Mississippi, $16,500 every year.
We get a little pushback, Mr. Busby, on the Oxford. I frankly, again, I like the per square footage, but not with a cap. I mean, I don't think, I like something along what Athens is doing, I guess.
Walk over to Black Warrior, let me see that one. So Black Warrior also pays $350, they got 600 square feet, and then those other numbers are what they would pay in those other cities.
Yes.
I think I mirror what Mr. Fail said. I'm not at all against these sidewalk cafes. They add an atmosphere to Tuscaloosa. But that is a valuable usage, and I think the fee should not be prohibitive, but it should be more than token. I consider what we have now token, because their landlords are not reticent about charging them for the square footage where they have seating inside. I mean, I can name places where it looks, just looking at it, like there's 25% of a place's total volume is on our taxpayers' property. I would lean more towards the square footage as well. I think we need, if we move towards changing it, I think we don't need to make sharp, jerky movements.
Sure.
We did that with something else that we had looked at. I think the business owners deserve to be transitioned into it, but let's have an end goal down the road, and let's move towards that in a way that they can make adjustments to their business as is best for their business.
In doing so, if we passed an ordinance like this, would you mean like not go into effect until?
No, I wasn't so much talking about the when it would go into effect, but because I assume for everybody, if we change an ordinance, it won't impact anybody until they go back for their next business license.
Right.
So I wasn't talking about the timing as much as I was talking about the pricing. If we have an end goal of where we want to get to pricing, then I would like us to move towards that incrementally so that the business owners have reaction time to observe, adjust, and make decisions, continue, don't continue.
Right. I don't have a problem with that, obviously. Which one of these models, and I know y'all have just looked at it, but what Auburn and, back that up if you would, Warren, just in comparison there. Is there one of those models you like better?
Is there any thoughts on which of those cities our downtown and strip atmosphere most closely correlate to?
I've always been asked, or I've always heard people compare Asheville to Tuscaloosa. I don't know.
It would
That's
be
all I
Athens
know.
or Asheville would be your two most.
Athens or Asheville?
Athens?
Auburn's downtown interfaces directly with campus. Oxford did an actual rent study to establish a price per square foot to get that number. Doesn't sound like that's the choice. Size and just general proximity, the other two would be your best ones.
Application fee is way too high though in Asheville, I think.
Mm-hmm. Go to the
Those
other one.
may-
Let me see the other one.
Which other one?
The one without the square foot.
Without. This
Yeah.
one? Oh, the first one?
No, the first one, I think.
And I agree with what Kip said, I've not thought about it, but it makes no sense to charge some little tiny, take just a smaller place the same $600 to apply
Right.
that we would charge as an application fee for some huge space. I think a very digestible application fee, and then the rest of it tied to square footage. And again, I'm assuming this is, we're not at a
No, this is
decision,
not.
this is discussion.
Yep, this is discussion and kind of send us on another pathway and we can send you a
We
proposal.
certainly take heed. Brendan, you said Oxford's was a rent study,
Yeah,
so it sounds like what they've done there is they've studied what the landlords are charging them inside, right?
correct, and what patio space would be, and then they established, I think it was an average price per square foot, which I think is where they arrived at that $22, and that's how they calculated. I'm not advocating for that,
No.
but that's why they have such a high
I
fee.
understand. And I think that hits all of us as, whoa, that's high, but we've got to start moving north on this. and
My
do it in a
one
right
thought
time.
I had, and I wanna know what y'all think, is perhaps if we do the square footage, $1 if you've got a coffee shop, which I think is different than as if you're serving alcohol, maybe $2 a square foot for alcohol. And I don't believe, I know some of these little places around here, it's different if you're selling coffee instead of alcohol. It just is.
But
You
what-
can't drink 12 coffees in
Well,
one
I can
evening.
try.
If you can, it's just not gonna go well.
Mr. Wilson, you want to say something?
I was listening to Mr. Busby. So how would you handle, one place that has, two places, they have the same square footage, one sells alcohol and one doesn't?
You've got a couple options, I think. So today we do it differently. We charge $100 per, $100 a year without alcohol and $250 if you have alcohol. And you could do something very similar.
Gotcha.
Any other questions, comments about this?
So I guess.
Did you have some more?
No, that's all I have on this one. And in terms of steps moving forward, so y'all, just to recap, we're kind of looking at something maybe similar to an Asheville with a different application fee, or what Athens is doing. Is that what y'all said? And then maybe a different price with.
Did you say Athens was similar, you think?
Yeah, I mean, I look at it as, this is more spatial than actual, exactly from a community. The size of Asheville and Athens, obviously have an SUC community. Auburn's downtown interfaces directly with campus. It's a unique situation, so I don't think that's the best example. Asheville or Athens is a more similar layout. I'm not advocating for a pricing, I'm just saying for just a downtown and strip and how it works. Those make the most logical sense for matched communities.
I agree. And if you've got that first slide, you've got this one on page 20. If you want to mull it over and have an inspired moment, Mr. Fail, I guess, would you like us to come back probably in about, do you want us to hit that first admin committee in
Sure.
November? We'll come back.
That'll be fine, but I would love to hear from what y'all think about this too, especially those, it's in your, most of this is in your districts. And I think I'd like to hear what y'all have to say. I mean, what I'm saying is I don't wanna be the one that says, here we are.
No, I agree completely. And I also, in this process, will make sure we're using Mr. Thompson and Ms. Moore to help continue to reach out to the business community that's gonna be impacted by this. Make sure that they're walking with us instead of being surprised.
Gotcha.
Sure.
That'd be best.
All right.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay. Will, let's talk about tall grass and boarded windows.
Yeah, good afternoon. Forgive me if I'm a little hoarse, a little under the weather today, but similar to what Ms. Kreitz just did with Sidewalk Cafes, this will be kind of an overview, a comparison of other cities, get some feedback, and come back with a possible proposal if that's what you indeed wish to do. So I'll do tall grass, and then building over here will handle the boarded windows. So those are our two code sections that refer to our tall grass. Highlights of that: any weeds, grass, kudzu in excess of 12 inches in height is a violation. It continues that any other vegetation, vines, underbrush, and even down trees or limbs have to be removed as well. 7 days from any notice, that can be verbal, that can be written, that can be a door tag. We typically do 7 to 10 business days, and if they don't cut it by then, or they don't remove the tree, we then reach out, that's the next slide, we reach out to our contractor. So again, you can see kind of the days adding up on the right from the day one when violation is observed and the occupant or the owner is notified. We recheck the property day 11, and then we turn it over to the city contractor. You see Calvin's Lawn Service out of Birmingham, Alabama. So sometimes it takes a day or two, sometimes it takes much longer, so I put 14 days there as kind of.
Sometimes it takes quite a bit of time.
That's right.
Let's be honest, he's taken a long time for some of these yards.
Yes, sir. So then, we send an invoice out, once we've gotten notification that the grass has been cut, and they have 30 days to pay that invoice. That invoice is typically gonna be $50. The contract with Calvin's Lawn Service is that if he goes in and it takes 20 minutes, it's $50. He gets a minimum of $50, but it's $25 an hour. So most lots you're gonna see in the city are gonna be, we pay Calvin $50.
So let me ask you this question, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Are there no grass cutters that we could use through Tuscaloosa bills that are local in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, instead of going all the way to Birmingham?
I
It's a
would-
competitive bid process, I believe, is how it's been handled in the past, and I think it's a 3-year contract.
Yeah. Cause
So I would agree, I would agree
I've
with
been
you,
asking about
because
that.
I've had issues of last year of them not
Right.
meeting the time requirements, we're not using local, it can take up to 60 to 90 days, which I
Right.
don't think pleases any of the council
Right.
or the constituency side, but yes, but my understanding is competitive bid.
It is a competitive bid, the contract is close to running up, and as you kind of touched on it, he's got a full-time job in Birmingham.
Right.
So can we move forward, change that to require you be local?
We're working through some of those processes, and our hope is that you will see positive change soon.
Gotcha.
By the time the next grass season rolls
Well,
around.
one of the issues is on this $50 is if he's only got 1 yard to do, why would he wanna come on down here to Tuscaloosa? Cause it's gonna cost him that in gasoline.
Mhm.
So he might be waiting to get several.
That's right.
Will, did I miss the first part? How long do you give someone once you post notice?
So the code says 7 days, 7 to 10 business days. You know, sometimes people will, for example, if we've got to mail a letter out of town on a vacant lot, we give them a couple more days, whereas if we can knock on the door and say, look, you know, can you cut your grass? It's a quicker communication process, but yeah, typically 7 to 10 days. So we do add, still on the far left here, we do add $100 administration fee because of simply the time and effort it takes to gather the invoice and everything that goes into that. So if they don't pay after 30 days, the lien process begins, and the Office of City Attorneys will receive that notification that the bill has not been paid. Section 1369 requires a 30-day waiting period and a letter before the lien process can begin. So they get another 30 days, and then if still not paid, the lien process begins, and that is by resolution of the City Council, which can take up to 6 weeks per OCA, and $14.50 filing fee is added to that. So what you end up with is almost 4-month process from time a violation is noticed to a lien being put on the property, and $164.50. So a couple of graphs here just to kind of give you an idea. This is great timing for this discussion because grass season is winding down, but you can see from 2019 to 2022 there how many overgrown grass cases are in the city, and we're right on pace for 2022.
Are those just the ones that are notated? Cause I know that my district, there may be more that may not have even met the list.
This is just through the 311 system,
Gotcha.
which I will say, vast majority come through, but to your point,
Yeah,
that's right, this is
it's a lot
just
that don't
311.
get caught.
And repeat offenders, 17%, so almost a fifth are the folks that are just letting it grow again, and letting it grow again until the city comes out and cuts it, and
We're their yard men.
that's right,
I can already tell you, before the next year starts, who we're gonna call.
yeah.
Right, you're exactly right.
Right, and then this is broken down by council district as well. The big story there, you can see 1, 2, and 5 certainly get the most, but only District 3 is low. There's plenty of cases in every district.
There's a lot in District 2.
Shoot, I call all the time. That's why the number's on.
Yeah.
5.
All right, so when we first started looking at consolidating code enforcement, we looked at those 4 cities in Alabama. And so we kind of looked at how do they handle tall grass. Mobile says 10 inches, and you have to have a public hearing before city council, before a contractor can go and cut it.
Lord, no.
They do have what you see there, and what you're going to see a theme with these cities is they escalate their fees for repeat offenders.
I like
So 175 in Mobile was $100 more each time that we've got to cut it within a 6-month period.
Oh, yeah.
Huntsville separates if you're in a neighborhood or not, 8 inches, 12 inches, but within a 2-year period, they have an escalated fine. And you'll notice at the very bottom there, that third offense, $500 and a mandatory 2 days in jail which is
Like that,
not
Mr. Wilson?
subject.
Yes, listen, hey, I'm with it. Actually, we've been talking about the lowest grass.
Yeah.
We've been talking about it.
And their code specifically says that cannot be a suspended sentence. You have to serve 2 days in jail. So they're real strict on the third.
See, I mean, and you know what? I'm gonna tell you like
Grass you talking about?
and we talk about, listen, we talk about competing with Huntsville in every aspect, you know. I hate to say it, but it would, yeah, I got hype, man. You ready? Because it would encourage people to take pride in their own properties. And it's sad that you gotta do this. It's sad that this has to be done.
I'm out of the grass business, that's all. Smoking, it's mine. Can Captain Simpson come help us?
We'll keep you ex officio, chief, just to keep you involved.
Ex officio, that's right.
All right, so Hoover, 12 inches. You have to send a certified letter. Defendant pays $30 the first time, $100 the second time, mandatory court appearance or summons for the third time. Birmingham is 10 inches, 100, 250, 500 plus court costs and a mandatory court appearance. Dothan, you can see, actually doesn't escalate, but they do have 12 inches, and they add up their total cost of labor, so they take the hourly pay of whoever's involved, the postage, printing, any other thing like that, and they have a formula for that. So, just to kind of wrap up what the city of Tuscaloosa does currently, most people will charge $150. There is no provision for repeat violators. Filing the lien is a long process. Citations are a possibility, but only TPD can do that. And with the number of cases, that may be a difficult practicality.
Well,
Yeah, but that,
I really think we need to have it accelerate. I don't know how y'all feel, but I really think it ought to be more, it's gotta be to the point that they wanna cut their own grass.
I like the Huntsville, Mr. Phil.
yes.
I'm Will's assistant. I'm at least good for something sometimes.
No, you work.
This is that summary that Will just talked about in terms of who escalates what and when.
This just, you're gonna come back with this for discussion on this?
Well, I kind of, we hope to come back with a draft code revision. Just kind of after a little bit of feedback from, kind of just similar to Sidewalk Cafes, you know. I know Councilman Wilson's talked about Huntsville. There are what other cities?
I like the 8 inches at Huntsville. I don't like more than that.
And could we adjust that with that 12 to like 9?
There is, I will say, there is a little bit of joy in being able to take a sassy wooden ruler out there and just stick it in the ground and say, it's a ruler height, this is too much.
Yeah.
But
12 inches has seemed to work if we can get people to cut their grass and get a contractor that's local and responsive.
I think one of the biggest challenges, and I'll let Chief and Mr. Smith comment on this, if you look at most violators are charged $150. They're just looking at that as, we'll just let you do it and we'll pay you for your time.
Yeah,
And actually, unless you put something in place to actually get them motivated to cut it, we just serve as their landscape contracting company. And Chief has been working.
That's what we saw over and over in code enforcement when grass is over at the PD. I mean, I pay $125 twice a month to get my grass cut by lawn service. So $150 ain't that much. So you're gonna have to escalate, in my opinion, you're gonna have to get to that 3, 4, 5, where it really hits and go, hey, I'm gonna take care of the property that I bought. But we saw people don't care. They'll pay that $150. It's cheaper than getting a yard guy.
And it's cheaper to them. And then, Chief, along those lines, they have already in their minds set times and dates when they know that they need to pay for that.
They know the game. I mean, they know the game and they play it well.
Oh yeah. So
Like a lot of things you deal with.
and putting pride back into having people to cut their grass, like you're saying, is this is essential. It'll make Tuscaloosa look better, it'll give
Yes, sir.
the neighborhoods and the property values of communities a better value.
I'm for getting up to $500 on that third one.
One thing to keep in mind is there are two ways of doing this. And the way we typically do it is the abatement of a nuisance, which is, you have to cut your grass. If you don't do it, we can either cite you or we're gonna come abate the nuisance and then we're gonna charge you for it. That charge has to be related to how much it's costing us. We can't arbitrarily just assign a charge to that. If you wanna go to the punitive side and go up to potentially $500, you can go to the criminal punishment side, but that then comes to either UD or somebody getting a summons or citation, summons issued from municipal court, or getting TPD back involved in
Going to
having a
jail for
citation
doing it.
issue.
Well, the summons wouldn't involve the police department.
No, sir. A enforcement officer from UD could go meet with a magistrate and do a summons.
I
Now,
think
it would
we all
involve
feel like that there needs to be some punishment, quite frankly.
it would potentially involve law enforcement when it comes to serving that summons. And we've seen this a little bit on some of the enforcement actions that we had to take with peers on Lake Tuscaloosa. So we have a little bit of a model for working this. I will say the going through the criminal justice system, which certainly isn't cut out necessarily for abatement of a nuisance like grass, you may end up with somebody that is not cutting their grass in March, and we're not getting any real traction with them in the criminal justice system until middle of the next summer. And so that doesn't necessarily help your district get the grass cut outside of a deterrent.
But Scott, just a question, comment and a question. As we've seen in the data, there are some grasses that have been reported on, may be higher than others. I can only speak for my district, and there is so much uncut grass that even the owners don't care to cut it. I agree with Mr. Fell, if we do not put teeth in it, I'm looking at a mixture between Huntsville and Birmingham. There may be some areas that people will cut their grass that do cut. But for those that don't, need some motivation. When I pledged Alpha, they called it motivation. And I believe as a city, we gotta have some motivation.
I don't disagree. I'm just trying to lay out the legal parameters on which you can do that, Mr. Wilson.
I don't want to put anything
What y'all call
we
it,
don't have to
man?
back on the police department. Part of this reorg, to get it away from there.
And Mr. Vail, part of what may help, and certainly if we get a new grass cutting contract, depending on how much it actually costs to cut the grass, and going back and really taking a look at our administrative time, how much administrative time OCA, it could be that $150 is below the amount that it's actually costing us. And if we charge a realistic abatement. Yes, sir. And so I'm not saying we can't add teeth to it. I just want to make sure we're kind of looking down the two avenues we can go.
Now, to that point, Mr. Woodson did say that 100 administration fee is about 20 years old, so we could look at that.
Inflation, it needs to be 500.
Yeah. I do want to note with summons, we can obviously go to the magistrate and swear them out, but we do ask TPD to actually serve those. So,
Well, if we can raise that original charge, that administrative fee, that would go a long way.
right.
And there might be more work the second time. But I would sure like to work it out where it's around $500 after that third time or third time.
Well, and I do think also once you get somebody who, you can tell the people that aren't cutting their grass.
Oh, yeah.
And kind of, when if you have a motivated contractor and motivated code enforcement that know, hey, this person hadn't cut their grass and we've had to go out there twice because somebody's complained, maybe not waiting for a complaint. And you can go on and my grass gets cut every 2 weeks during the summer and keep their grass in line.
Yeah.
And that would help.
Once your folks know who the serial
offenders.
Offenders
Yeah.
are, they could visit them on occasion.
Yeah.
So what we can do maybe is over the course, cause I know we've still gotta hear from Mr. Boswell and Mr. Junkin on
Yeah.
boarded up windows. But we hear what you like and we know what you don't like, in terms of our current ordinance, so maybe if you'll give us a month, we'll
Sure.
get that second, admin committee meeting in November. And that gives us all time to look at our administrative fees, whether they are actually where they should be, and what we can be looking at, for possible code amendments,
Sure.
if that works for y'all.
Sounds good.
Good work, Ashley, good work.
Oh, no, this was all Mr. Smith,
Thank you,
please.
Will.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, Mr. Boswell. Don't take my eyes off.
Just don't slap Kevin Hart. Our Will Smith. No Ike, no.
Yeah.
Middle button.
Huh?
Go to the right. One second.
There we go. So we want to talk about boarding, excuse me, structures. It's not a lot to it, but I do want to make you understand that we do have the 2021 International Property Code that's effective now, thanks to the council adopting it back in January. It's effective May 1st, but we've always had an International Property Maintenance Code. We're just on a newer version. So when we talk about boarding windows or openings in a building structure, they're not actually a part of the code. They're part of appendices in the back of the code that if a jurisdiction wants this to be a part of the code, they have to reference that in the adoption. And we do that with a lot of our codes. Anyway, our current requirements that's in the code now is that doors and windows shall be boarded in an approved manner to prevent entry of unauthorized person and shall be painted to correspond to the color of the existing structure. So that's a conversation within itself is what corresponds. Is it the same color or it can be an off color that kind of gives it a different look. At the end of this PowerPoint, we've got a couple of pictures I'll show you some correct ways and some things that are not so
We're not
correct.
enforcing this.
But I do want to make sure that our boarding material has to be a minimum half-inch thick, whether it's boards, whether it's sheeting, or whatever material, because that's what the code calls for. They have to be cut to fit the opening, or they have to be, if they overlap, they have to be uniform on all sides. And then if you do doors, and you have to keep one door to where it's permissible to access the property, the other doors can be sealed on that, but you have one that's secured. But what I want to make a point is that boarding windows and doors is not a requirement of the code. It's more of an option. All the code is doing is giving you a prescriptive method how to do it. So that's what we need to understand. I want to make sure everybody understands there's no requirement. The code requires you to board up the windows of the door, but if you do, here's the prescriptive method that the city has adopted through this appendices.
Okay.
And I just want to make sure that we understand that. There was a couple of things that we added to the amendments in 2015 code adoption that was not part of the amendments we felt like we needed to put in there. And this is what we did from our city as a point. The code official shall approve the time limit for structures and buildings to be secured by boarding. There was nothing in the code or the Tennessee that ever mentioned any time limit. So this is something that I'm gonna go a little bit deeper into that. But at the same time, there was other methods out there that in the other code section that we need to have the flexibility and the option to look at other methods in the way people are doing it. And we want to make sure it works and it's correct.
Sure.
The time limit thing is, first of all, you don't want to board up a building that's being occupied. This is more or less a building that's either abandoned or is not being occupied at the time, because then we get into some safety issues about egressing from these structures in case there's other events that happen. The boarding up of windows and doors is basically to keep unauthorized people out. of that building. So we do have some people that own structures in our town that probably don't live here, that's probably family property, that have boarded up. To secure it, they took to one of the methods, I will show you the pictures where they did a very good job boarding it up. They secured the building. There's nothing wrong with the building from a property maintenance standpoint on that. There may be times when we're in condemnation, and I know y'all hear from Barry a lot on there, we may need them to secure an opening because the building may be unsafe. It may not be painted and done correctly how the code is. We need this secured quickly. So that's another thing we have to think about when we do those. So boarding of windows and doors is not a normal practice. There's usually some reason we're applying that. Well, that just don't work for me. There you go. This right here is a proper boarding. You probably can't tell that it's even boarded up. We've got some people that's actually went to the point to cut it, fit it, screw it, secure it, and paint it, and it looks like from the street, you can't tell it's boarded up. This one, some of you may recognize this one. This one's on Greensboro Avenue, isn't it right, Barry? Yes, sir. I think it was. It's been boarded up for a long time. And we dealt with this for many years. Every time he'd replace the windows and fix them, they'd get knocked out or something would happen. So they were boarded up, cut to fit, and painted, done a very good job, made it look like winter paint. You wouldn't know it unless you was right up next to it. We don't ask our citizens to go that far, but it was ingenious for them to do that because it doesn't display a house being abandoned or not occupied and being boarded up. All right, next. All right, this is improper based on the code, but it does cover the outline of the windows. The only problem is it's not painted, it's not weather protected, and it doesn't look good in the community on that. But it has secured the building except the top up there. I noticed the window was up. Battery must be going dead. There you go. Okay, I got a big phone there. I was right there.
Back up and show those really nice boarded up. They left the room, I think. Or the one before, I really liked that. Yeah, you can't even tell it's boarded.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's actually boarded up with sheeting, it's painted, and he's got painted to look like window panes. It's a very good disguise, very good job. That's not required by what code we have adopted, but I mean, that was, there's no attraction to know.
Other than the grass.
Painted house, fully protected. Our citizens do have a right to protect their property and board them up, so we just try to prescribe the method on that. Sure. The other thing is, a lot of these boarding up in town, we may not ever know about it. Some of the best help we get comes from our citizens out here, 311, or people making complaints. There's a lot of things go on that we don't ever see, and we may not know it happened or done, so. Go down, let me try it now. There we go. This was improper, we showed that. I want to show another one where we see a lot of people trying to do this. It's totally not proper by the way our codes are set up. It's probably something quick. This is something I expect to see where if you had kids playing and bust out a window and you board something up temporarily for a week or two or whatever till you get a window. But the other thing is shipment supply. Windows are taking forever to come in now by the contractor, so maybe a time limit would be best to use on somebody, but we gotta have a lot of respect for our neighbors in those neighborhoods too. They need to do that. And this is another one where they pretty much did a good job on cutting and fitting, trying to get it in, but they left the top open. You should secure the whole window if you're gonna do that. Especially if that's on the outside wall, that catch a lot of rain, a lot of other stuff coming in too on that.
So what do we need to do to help you?
I think the code pretty much takes care of it. It's just whether we can get out and can work it and make contacts. Like I said, a lot of these things we don't know about that get done. Anything that's dealing with property maintenance, we're gonna be on top of that. We give them information on how it has to be done to meet this and go from there. Condemnation would be ones where we need something done quick. We're probably gonna be a little bit more lenient in those areas, so we need to keep somebody out of that house at that point.
Ashley?
Well, and there may also be some small amendments to the code that would make a big impact just in terms of the amount of time something is able to stay boarded up, the amount of time, you could plug in some natural disasters or this, that, and the other, a fire, and you could say these are the instances in which, we gotta get you covered up quickly, we gotta
Right.
get this secured, and then you've got X amount of time to turn something around. So there could be some small amendments that would make a big difference for your communities when it comes to boarded up windows.
Just for an economic standpoint, and I think the good examples Mr. Boswell showed are probably a better demonstration. I think we need to help our property maintenance team out. Is that boarded up windows and general blighted properties reduce the surrounding property values by 3 to 7%, and that's on a conservative side. 3 to 7%. So you can have a perfectly taken care of house, your property value is going to go down.
Well, it's a real public safety issue too.
And people need to know that too.
Yeah, I
Thank
mean,
you,
I
Brad.
can go in there and smoke crack and you can't watch,
It's true.
I mean, I can get in there is what I'm saying if it's not boarded up. You like that, did you? For the record, I've never smoked crack, but at any rate. But it is a public safety issue, that's what I look.
We could probably, like with the tall grass, we could take this next month and work with the legal folks and see what kind of proposed amendments could be out there for your communities
Sure.
and your districts and come back in a month.
Okay, sounds good.
Because I know everyone wants to talk short-term rental.
Yes, let's talk, unless you had something to add.
I'm good. If
Good.
y'all got any more questions?
I think we're good. Short-term rental,
Thank you.
thank you.
We've all hopped in the Wayback Machine, haven't we?
Yes.
And we're not worried at all about what we're doing, are we?
No.
I didn't think so. I didn't think we were. All right. So where we are at this point in time is short-term rentals. I'm gonna give you the quick down and dirty version of where we were, where we've been, where we got, where we are today. I did this with Mr. Fail yesterday in about 10 minutes. Think I can do it again. So, June 2017. We created our first short-term rental ordinance. We had not had a short-term rental ordinance prior to that. And so, what that meant was short-term rental of your property was illegal. Couldn't do it. In 2017, we decided in a very, very, very lengthy stakeholder engagement process. These were the themes that we were hearing from our stakeholders: enforcement, life safety issues, nuisances, making sure somebody was responsible, wanted it on Lake Tuscaloosa, neighborhood stabilization, public input, and then making it illegal to advertise without a number. So we created two definitions, one for short-term rental and one for a transient. These definitions have held with us for what is now 5 years. And so we continue to use these definitions today. 2017, short-term rentals were only allowed on the Lake District and then in the downtown campus district. And so you see here, this is an oldie but a goodie, this short-term rental map showing all the potential short-term rentals on Lake Tuscaloosa in 2017. Then this was our downtown campus district, bordered by the river to the north, McFarland on the east, 15th Street to the south, and 28th Avenue, now Nick's Kids Avenue, on the west. And so that was our downtown campus district, and you see that property ownership at the time. What we did was we put a 3% cap on multifamily properties, and you'll see that shown in red. The total number of units, we said you can have no more than 3%. And in our historic districts, we capped each historic district at 10%. Yeah, we're still going, Miss Howard, don't worry. Short-term rentals, you're just in time. Don't worry. May 2018, we moved forward from there and we said, you know what? Zoning Board of Adjustment is doing a great job. We're not gonna make any changes for the Lake District, but in the downtown campus district, the Zoning Board of Adjustment was approving most of the short-term rental applications that they saw. So we removed the HPC or the ZBA requirement for historic properties, limited some in the Druid City Historic District, and increased the caps on apartments and condos. So again, that was this area within the historic districts. Your Druid City Historic District caps increased to 10% in apartments and condos, we bumped to 50. Then May 2019 happened. And this is where we were asked by the council in the winter of 2018 to begin looking at the codes again and possibly looking at a citywide ordinance. And so finally in May of 2019, we hit an ordinance that hit all 6 of the goals that were outlined between neighborhood protection, enforcement, collecting taxes, making sure things were safe, that we were licensing, and that we had user-friendly policies. And so we kept that tourist overlay downtown campus district, and we said it was permitted by right unless you're in a historic district, no license caps unless you're multifamily or condo. We'd set a limit on the number of multifamily and condo licenses and say that in this area, no more than 45 nights per year. If you wanted to go more, Zoning Board of Adjustment was going to handle that. Outside of the tourist overlay district, special exception use. So citywide, special exception use unless you were in downtown. Historic districts were always going to be special exceptions. And then our multifamily and condo properties capped at 150. So what does that look like on a map? Pretty colors. Pretty colors on a map. So blue, where the city of Tuscaloosa limits, where it's a special exception. The yellow was the area, that downtown campus district, where it was permitted by right. And then purple was our historic districts, and those are special exception uses. And so making it easy to understand, and this opened it up for the city as a whole. Our special exception primary criteria, these are things that when the Zoning Board of Adjustment is looking at, these things must be present. Property on land within the city limits, there has to be some place to occupy, no commercial events, they have to meet building and fire codes, no signage, and you cannot occupy it for less than 24 hours. Zoning Board of Adjustment was also given discretionary criteria through this ordinance that y'all passed in 2019. And these are the things I think that have potentially caused concern in terms of what y'all have voiced to me. So the board is able to determine that the short-term rental is not going to be detrimental to the neighborhood or surrounding properties, looking at the physical relationship of the use to the surrounding structures. We want to make sure that there's at least one off-street parking space for every 2 adults. Parking has to be on a driveway or in a parking area. The board can consider whether or not the property is a permanent residence or whether it's leased entirely to somebody for periods less than 30 days. The physical characteristics of the neighborhood and surrounding properties, like topography, how you access. They can cap the number of nights per year, and then in renewals, the board can look at things like complaints and violations. So what this has resulted in, let's get into where we are today. What the ZBA is looking at, for the most part, is that discretionary criteria. The Zoning Board of Adjustment has gone from about 20 minutes per case to about 5 minutes per case when they're considering it. They're looking at the number of bedrooms and bathrooms within each property, the number of vehicles that can be parked in the driveway or parking area. Typically, they're allowing 2 adults per vehicle, and tandem parking, so one vehicle behind the other, of not more than 2 vehicles, allowing them to use garages. And this has been, you know, as staff, when the planning staff is talking with applicants, of course, they've got the criteria that they can take a look at, and our staff is able to guide the applicants with, hey, listen, this is generally where you are. You've only got 2 bedrooms in this house, but you're asking for 10 people. You may want to cut that back some. That's probably not going to fly. And so what you have seen though is the number of zoning board of adjustment cases. And this is all the way back to 2017. So in that first year when it was adopted, you had 12 cases. In 2018, we had 21 cases, and then, well, actually, we had 33 cases total. Or no, I'm backwards. It's been a long day. I'm so sorry. 21 cases, 12 of them were denied. And so what that was the night of the special call zoning board of adjustment meeting where everyone asked for use variances to allow short-term rentals outside of the downtown campus district, and every single one got denied. By the time we hit the citywide ordinance in 2019, you'll see those numbers. Of course, 2020, that was a COVID year. And so far this year, we have seen 68 total cases. There's 14 more on Monday night's agenda for a grand total, math is hard, 82. So there will be 82 zoning board of adjustment cases so far, and there are 2 months left. In terms of licenses and revenues, those have been steadily increasing as well over time. So this is the type of license by property type. You've got single family on the left, multifamily on the right, and you'll see now we are up to 197 total short-term rental licenses. What that does mean, though, is quite a bit of money that has been collected from tax revenues. So you'll see the differences between what we have budgeted. So in 2018, of course, we budgeted 120, collected 56. But as time has gone on, we have pulled in quite a bit more tax revenue than what we had originally budgeted for. In 2022, so far, $440,000.
Wow.
And so what that revenue impact is, this just breaks it out between the tax and the license fees for a total of where we are. So between the $440,000 in taxes in 2022, we've also collected $24,000 in license fees for a total of $464,813. And what we have budgeted in 2023 is that line below. So while it is not a huge budgetary impact, it is making an impact, at least in the staff. It's at least trying to cover staff time in terms of what we're bringing in. So that is what we have and where we are today. And I know y'all had asked for just an overview of our short-term rental process and where we are, and I did it in about 10 minutes.
You did.
Whew.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is it taking up a lot more time than it did for your department?
I think that's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. The planning staff has gotten very good at processing these applications. I think that there are also a lot of applications that are happening that may not need to go forward. If you know what's happening, that rubber stamp that's about to happen almost, and I hate to say that because it shouldn't be that way, but I think oh God, Scott, I'm about to say it. We may need to look at the ordinance again.
Well, I wondered if that's where we were going.
I'm so sorry. Scott and I have been together on this ordinance since 2017.
And that is why I want to propose something. I made a dumb move in chairing this way back. And it was a year-long process that was not fun and was very contentious, as you remember. And this has gotten, in my opinion, so far out of hand. I don't think this is... I kind of thought when we first started talking about this, we only had a few bed and breakfast type deals. I didn't realize it was going to be in every neighborhood. I didn't realize, and I got a good point, and it was in the Highlands, but it's not alone, that it was a not occupied house. And they don't plan on living there, but now it's going to be a business in a neighborhood. I don't care where it is, the Downs had the same issue. It's,
And
the Arcadia, I mean, it's just been, I don't think so what I'm asking, for y'all go back and I'm asking for a moratorium on any further short-term rentals, except those, of course, they'll be grandfathered, the ones that are on that you said that are already have a made application.
The folks for Monday night.
And then go back and, this has become crazy, where I mean, we've had 3-4 hour meetings at the ZBA. ZBA's even saying, please y'all help us do something about this. Linda Ford's one of them. She told me, she said, this has just gotten too, I mean, I don't think Linda minded me saying it, I just said it anyway. But she said, this has just gotten too much. And I agree. If we could, if the council will agree that we, like we did with the student apartments and all that, call for a moratorium till we have a chance to go back and look at things such as basically, all the ones early days are been owner occupied. I've got a friend that does it. She goes and stays with her daughter on the weekends that they use it, but she's checking on her house constantly. We've got people now that are not living in the neighborhoods that are basically running a business out of a neighborhood. And I don't think that's right at all. So I would just like to call a halt to it till you all have, had a chance to go back and review. And I think you agree we need to go back and look at some things from the talks you and I have had. Does anybody have a problem with that?
And I don't mind if we have a resolution to that it doesn't have to come before this committee necessarily, if you want to go ahead and do it next week.
Yeah.
Mr. Hall?
Well, I'll work on something.
Well, can we?
So Kip, are you proposing a moratorium on new short-term rental applications?
Yes, sir.
Can we do that?
We did it on student
Yes, sir.
apartments.
I know we
can do
did.
We can do
Not
it.
sure we could do that, but
We can put a moratorium on anything.
One
I
of the
guess,
questions, and I do have some ideas that I was actually about to send Ms. Kreitz. One of the things that makes a moratorium more defensible is a shorter, more finite length of time. At a certain point, when you start to have a moratorium for lengths of years, it stops kind of being a moratorium.
And that's what I'm looking for.
And so kind of my thought would be, and my guess is, we'll see an increase come January or so. And so I'll write the initial one through maybe December 31st, and we'll put our nose to the grindstone and get with the precise issues that you're seeing in your district that are causing this to be a problem, and see how we can address those with as small of manipulations of this code as possible, because we spent literally thousands of hours with stakeholders on these things back in the past, and I really don't want to go back down that road.
let me,
Neither do I.
can I add this into the conversation? Because obviously my district is overwhelmed. It has changed the face of District 4.
Yep.
And I don't know that will ever be changed back. But in that learning process, I want to put this on the table. Because if you're not dealing with it as surrounded as I am by it every day, and by the way, I do it, okay? So what I was going to put on the table is, I think you should be aware that all short-term rentals are not alike. And here's where I'm going from there.
I agree with
At
that.
the very beginning, before this thing
Did that.
mushroom, if we had made this owner occupied, we would have eliminated the need for the vast bulk of regulation that we're now having to wade down into. Because when it's owner occupied, the person who lives there is there. They leave for the weekend, they come back, they have to look the neighbors in the eye, they have to keep the property safe and well kept.
I'm with you.
And it's just a little side gig. When we opened it up across, when we did not put that restriction, it became an industry.
Yes.
And that, what's going on in my district is, it's an industry.
It's becoming that way in mine too.
And you have large buyers buying multiple properties simply to be used as short-term.
That's right.
That's not a proposal of any kind. That's for those of you that are not having to deal with it. You need to be aware of that.
Exactly right. Because if you're not dealing with it yet, you will be.
Chairman Fail, and I think to echo Councilor Busby's point, one of the things you should keep in mind as you're reviewing this policy is, as Councilor Busby alluded to, more of the industry component. We discussed earlier with the Chamber of Workforce Housing, right? If you have a non-owner occupied threshold in there, that makes it very attractive from an investment property standpoint. What that does is it takes it out of the housing stock supply, makes it an investment property or a business, as you put it, and that's gonna eat up more of your supply for people to access housing. So I think that's a real factor that indirectly comes into any short-term rental regulation. So kind of put that in your calculus as you're working through and think what's gonna be best for the community. Mr. Busby makes an excellent point on that.
So, Mr. Fail, what I might
And that was
suggest,
exactly where I'm coming from, what he said.
if we, as we move forward, if this is the direction we're, moving forward to, and we are trying to hit a December 31st possible expiration to start with, what I might suggest is we come back in that first admin committee to do a quick work session about the big topics that y'all are seeing in your district, where you need to see those fixes happen, because that at least puts us on target to hit the November Planning and Zoning Commission meeting with something, because this is a zoning text amendment, and that process typically takes about 8 weeks. So we would need to get started on that pretty quickly.
Okay. Whatever we need to do to get you that.
But that process that Mr. Tyner's talking about doesn't begin here, right? It ends here, right?
It can go all of the above.
It should.
Okay.
It should.
Okay, I don't want to cut this short, but we've got another committee
I
meeting.
know.
Anything extremely important you feel like you need to ask?
So where do we end this right now as far as my request?
I'm sorry, Lou.
If we're doing the moratorium request for resolution next week, there needs to be a motion and there needs to be votes on it.
Oh, okay.
I will make that motion.
All right, wait a second.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, passes. All right, this is all we have. Does anyone have anything else they need to bring up? Okay, not seeing anyone jump up, I'm gonna ask for a motion that we adjourn.
So moved.
Do we have a second that we adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.